Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Female Filmmakers Fuse with Alexa Polar and Robin Pabello, only on LA Talk Radio.
Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Alexa Polar, here at Female Filmmakers Fuse. I'm back. I've been gone. I've been sick. So real quick shout out to Ash Warren for helping me out and covering for me. So yeah, it's rainy. It's a gloomy Sunday, but I love it because it's cozy and warm when you're at home or wherever you happen to be that's safe. People tend to freak out in LA when water drops from the sky. So I don't know. It's just common sense. Just drive safer. So that's what I'm saying. Please, everyone, drive safer if you're on the road. I drove here and got here in one piece, thankfully. But anyhow, real quick, the number to call in is 818-602-4929. That's 818-602-4929. Quick reminders, we have the deadline coming up for the elevator pitch contest, which is a free contest. Send us your short script if you want to see if we can get it produced for you. It's all based on voting, so the public will vote for the best script, and we will produce it for you. There'll be behind the scenes of how it happens. That way, it's a learning process for everyone. It's pretty much from pitch to post. That's what it is, pitch to post. So we'll be capturing all of that, and then the final product will premiere at our 3rd annual Female Filmmakers Fuse Film Festival. All those F's. There you go. I'm really excited about today. Not because of Super Bowl Sunday, because I'm one of those people that doesn't care unless it's the commercials. So that's what I'm into. I watch it for the commercials. By the way, I don't know if anyone knows this, but there's a taco guy. He has a taco truck. He actually paid money to have his commercial screened during the Super Bowl. I'm curious as to what this commercial looks like. He's going to make himself super famous just because of this commercial and putting all this effort and money into it. I hope people try his tacos. They're probably super expensive because he has to pay back for this commercial. But he's a smart guy. Rams are playing, and so he's doing it because it's an LA-based thing, and he's doing his own commercial during the Super Bowl. So that's going to be interesting. I don't believe it's local. I think it's a national thing, which is crazy because everywhere in the United States are going to watch this guy's commercial and think, I have to go to LA and try his tacos. So I'm curious about that. Not the game, the commercials. I'm just being honest, but go whoever your team is. All right, now back to the real fun, the real reason why I love coming here on Sundays. I get to meet amazing filmmakers. And today, seriously, come on. Paulina. I can't say your last name.
Lagudi.
Lagudi. There you go. I was like, I don't want to botch it because I'm known for that.
That's all right.
But lovely to meet you. We met in the lobby.
Yes. So nice meeting you too.
But we got to chat, and I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about, what we're going to share. I want to congratulate you on your project, which is what we're going to be discussing and everything that it took to make it and where it's at. It's called Mail Order Monsters.
Yes.
I saw the trailer. I encourage you guys to watch it. It's great because then when you watch the trailer, you're going to want to watch the film. And that's where I'm at. It's streaming, and we're going to get into all that, where you can find it, where you can see it. Paulina, welcome.
Thank you. It's so nice to look out at the beautiful rainy LA weather.
Right?
It's an awesome window.
Right? Nice. Yeah. Looks nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not too bad. We're nice and dry in here.
I know. It's all cozy. Do a little podcast. This is great.
There you go. So tell me, did you write this?
I did.
You wrote it, and did you direct?
I did all 3 hats. So
Okay.
I wrote, directed, and produced it. It's actually a funny story. My fiance, who's a cinematographer, we were hired. I was set to line produce a movie called Mail Order Monster under a different director-producer, and the script was originally done by a great writer. His name's Mark Prey, a friend of mine. Well, we've become friends, and the movie actually ended up losing funding. And I was like, man, this is a great title. It's a family movie, which I never thought I would get into doing that as my first feature, but I was like, I wanted to, I knew some people in distribution. They really liked the title. I'm like, I never saw a family movie that I related to as a kid, which is, I come from a blended family. I had a stepmom that came in when I was about 13, and just issues with my mom and all this, and very close relationship with my dad. And I never found that really portrayed in a family movie with a lead female character. So when the other director-producer lost funding and lost the option on the script, I called Mark and I bought the script entirely. So I bought all the rights to all of it.
Wow.
And that was about October, November 2016. I had a first draft by December, and we shot the film in July 2017.
Wow, look at you.
So it was very, very fast. There were 8 drafts in between there. It just only was like Mail Order Monster for like an entire year and a half only. And that was my first feature-length screenplay I'd ever written.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank
That
you.
sounds awesome. I mean, that's incredible because like you don't really hear that, there's a certain process to it, and I love hearing when things are done slightly different.
Yeah.
And I think that it's more serendipitous.
Yeah, very much so. It was like, I saw the opportunity, and I'd been to AFM that year, and, just did a lot of research in wanting to make an independent film in a way where it actually had a chance, right? So many times people make their first indie film and they spend too much time in post-production. They make a film that really is dependent on major festivals for it to even see the light of day, and even then they probably sign a bad deal and whatnot, or they don't know who their audience is. So I wanted to make a genre film. I wanted to make a movie that I love making, like I love young audiences, whether it's a movie that especially stuff that I'm writing now, whether it's really a family genre or if it's a more adult, rated story, but it's tailored toward the kids and family. I'm just very interested in it. And so I wanted to make a movie that's dedicated to my stepmom, and that, was really for any young girl that kind of went through what I went through and loved E.T. and all that stuff, and the old family movies that really took you on an adventure. So I kind of wanted to bring that back, just turn the wheel a little bit of a different way. And so just the opportunity came up, and I seized it, and I just friggin' went for it. I didn't really there was a lot of thinking and planning for sure, but turnaround.
A lot of learning
on the way. But this film was really focused on turnaround.
Okay.
Getting it done, getting it out there in a short amount of time. Because as we know, especially in the landscape of independent films, changes so quickly. I mean, I couldn't make Mail Order Monster today the way that I did even a year and a half ago, because it's just changed so much.
Right.
So that was, and we met that goal, and it was all about, minimizing risk with tax incentives and everything, which we did. And that was great. So I learned a lot on that end. And yeah, it was a learning experience for sure.
No, yeah. And we're going to get to that before we get further into Mail Order Monsters and then everything else that you have going on. I wanted to know real quick, how did you get into this industry? Like, what brought you into it?
Yeah, interesting series of events of life. I actually was a dancer growing up, competitive my whole life. So I always had, was always a performer, always into entertaining, and then really got into, I went to Performing Arts High School, and you take choreography classes, and I really got into storytelling from that point of view, through movement. And then bad foot injury, dance went downhill, had to go to college, and I went to school for theater.
Okay.
So, obviously a great choice there.
Right.
Yeah. But the good thing about going to Chapman was they have the film program that works really closely with the theater department and the actors there, and the screen acting program. So that was my first time being even exposed to independent film and how that works.
Chapman's a good college in Orange County, especially for film.
Totally. It's so close to LA.
Yeah.
So I would come down to LA a lot because no one in my family's even been to college, so I didn't really know anything. I didn't even know you could go to school for film. Like I didn't know, I didn't do that. And then after graduating Chapman, my fiance and I met on set 2 months after. So and then he's, he went to school for cinematography. He's extremely talented and always knew what he wanted to do. And as soon as we met, he's like, wow, you have interesting ideas and you're kind of bossy. You'd be a great producer and a great director. We should make stuff. And so from there, we just did. We've never stopped making things.
That's great. And you have other things that you made prior to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we got into we did narrative short films, but we also got into making a branded work for companies.
Okay.
And pretty much like anything. We sometimes did like little experimental things,
Mm-hmm.
but we did a lot. What was actually really helpful and directly related to the feature was doing these branded work for companies on a location that I've never seen before. And we had one day to shoot the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Okay.
so
Okay.
you're getting there, you're looking at it, and you have to tell a story, and you know what the client wants, and so you really have to move fast. You're
Yeah.
working with people who aren't actors as well, you know, especially
Okay.
if you're doing interview-based stuff. So it really teaches you a lot about, you know, making your days, you know, being adaptable, all those things that you need when you're, you know,
Yeah, because
making indie film.
normally you scout things out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pre-production with scouting, especially in
which
location.
I love pre-production.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I love it. But it helps me a lot for when, you know, when you do pre-pro and then, you know, things happen and you just have to be adaptable.
So now let's jump forward back to Mail Order Monster,
Mm-hmm.
and let's really dive into this, okay?
Okay.
Because you've learned a lot from this, and I
Yeah.
think this is important. That way, anyone that's listening could learn as well from your experience, and then you're doing something based off what you learned.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll take it in those steps.
Perfect.
Okay, so let's start with obviously it all worked out because we'll get to where it's at now, where
Yeah.
people can catch it and where they can watch it. But so you made the success, all that's great. But let's talk about the fires that you had to put out
Yeah.
along the way.
So many fires.
You filmed it in Kansas,
Kentucky.
Yes.
So
Wrong K.
Yeah, wrong K. Which, you know, a lot of films shoot in Kentucky, but
Okay.
typically when they shoot in Kentucky, they shoot in Louisville, which is, you know, up north. They've got quite an infrastructure up there. You know, it's quite close to Chicago, so there's a lot going on.
Okay.
We shot in Horse Cave in Munfordville, Kentucky, which is like 1,600 people. It's an hour and a half from Nashville.
Okay.
It's not a lot going on.
Gotcha.
Very, very little infrastructure.
Okay.
Which provided some pros that we were going for. This is where you kind of have to really weigh the pros and cons of I consider it a remote location.
Okay.
Which is you get locations for very cheap,
Mm-hmm.
if not free,
Mm-hmm.
which provides a lot of production value that we could never have gotten in like a bigger city.
Right.
The con is you have no infrastructure. So if, for instance, gear goes down or just getting gear, those prices can go up. Just getting hands, like people who, because, you know, with the tax incentive, you want to hire as many locals as possible, but there's not as many qualified locals because the area doesn't have as much of an infrastructure. They're still building that. So that provided a bit of a challenge, a huge challenge, actually. I mean, we had a 10-ton truck and like team of 4 for our G&E at one point. So yeah, it was pretty nuts.
Yeah.
Also, we shot the movie in 17 days and our lead's a 12-year-old.
Wow.
So really, because of SAG rules,
Right,
we
yeah.
shot like 13 scenes in 8 hours almost every day.
Wow.
So that's a lot.
That
I mean,
is.
that is a
That's-
fire in itself.
Right.
But
Because time constraint with and did you have a studio teacher on set?
we didn't have to have a studio teacher because our kids ended up, like, because of how it worked, they could be Kentucky locals, and most of them were Kentucky locals. And it was summer, so they didn't require
okay.
studio teacher.
Good.
So that
Okay.
worked out
That
great.
did.
Yeah, I could not have had a studio teacher. On that side. But we, you know, the parents were amazing, and they were always there. It's just we were moving so fast. And the biggest issue was the fact that hiring your keys, right? You know, first feature, I'm hiring keys that I've actually never had to hire before.
Okay.
And sometimes when, you know, you're a first-time director, you put a lot of trust in people's resume.
Okay.
And you put a lot of trust in people being like, I've done this a million times.
Right.
I got this. I got the experience.
Right.
Pretty much everyone that said that to me ended up being the worst person I hired.
Wow.
Yeah, they ended up being the ones that either just didn't do the job or royally messed up the job to the point where, like, I actually only lost 1 day of shooting, which, like, we just had to, because of, you know, I had a set that just wasn't dressed, you know,
Right.
at all. So that was interesting to have to deal with, but that pretty much sums up the majority of the fires I went through was because of keys that I had a bit of a bad gut feeling about, but they were like very, very overconfident about what they could do.
So they convinced you.
They convinced me, and I put trust in them, and, you know, they burned terribly, you know, and that was very interesting. Mother Nature also played a huge role in the fires because, you know, shooting in Kentucky in the middle of summer, there's a point where, you know, you're dealing with like almost 100% humidity half the time, and it's like, you know, 110 degrees. I mean, there were heat warnings, and so crazy. I fainted once on set because of dehydration. Oh my God.
That's what I mean. Like, I get heat strokes.
It was crazy.
Don't know if I could do that.
It was nuts. That part was interesting. And then, you know, our second to last day of shooting, we got hit. We're shooting the climax of the movie, and we got hit with an insane thunder and lightning storm. Like, and we're in a forest, so we have to shut everything down. And I'm like looking through my insurance policy, like, if I force majeure this situation, like, what am I gonna do? You know, what can I do here? It ended up working out where we just waited, and I only had 2 hours to shoot the climax of the movie, so I had to rewrite the whole thing.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
actually, you'll see it in the film. It's actually, it worked out quite nice because we have these comic book graphic elements in the movie that were planned ahead of time, and then we had one that bookends it really nicely. So because of Mother Nature, so that was interesting. And then there were some fires that popped up. You know, post-production went relatively smoothly. I mean, I had a composer that ended up having a complete mental breakdown, you know, 2 days before turning in the music deadline. So I had to hire a composer to do the entire film in 2 weeks. So that was also interesting.
Oh my gosh.
You know, but at that point I was like so used to this kind of situation that I was like, yep, okay, moving on.
What
like
else?
you just don't even think about it. You're just like, yep, okay, doing it, you know, moving on to the next thing. All right, let's you just can't panic, you can't get down on yourself. One thing that I haven't mentioned on any podcast before is like how you deal with the fires is really important. Like regardless of the fires will always come up. People, no matter how great they say they are or how good you feel about them, will always be crappy. But how you deal with them is really important. And I would say 60% of the time I dealt with it pretty well, and 40% of the time I didn't. And I think that sometimes exacerbated a problem or created another problem.
Okay.
And that's something that I would highly, you know, I don't even know if the word would recommend, but people to like go have some sort of system for yourself ahead of time on how to deal with issues.
Okay.
Not even just like mostly just emotionally, right? So sometimes, I mean, you know, I'm Italian, so we get very hot-headed. Yeah, hot-headed. So, and also I'm very hands-on. So if there's a problem, I had a production team, but I was like the main producer on set, and I'm directing. If there's a problem, instead of giving it like a pause and letting them deal with it, I would often just deal with it. And sometimes, a lot of the times why people are messing up is because they themselves have things going on, right? So all you're doing is adding more fuel to that fire. Sometimes too, you have to be aware of like if someone's a bit of a loose cannon, but you're stuck with them on set, because I couldn't fire anyone because I had no hands and I'm in the middle of nowhere. You know what I mean? And we didn't like in the budget to bring someone out really made no sense at the time. So sometimes you have to think, okay, this person is an issue. They're a bit of a loose cannon though, where unless I sometimes, you know, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, right? I know if I tick them off, they could do something really bad to this production.
Gotcha.
Right?
Which is unhealthy regardless.
Which is unhealthy regardless, and not a situation you want to be in, but sometimes you're better off putting your ego back and instead of calling someone out on how terrible they are, even though it feels so good and it's very well deserved, sometimes you're better off pulling that person aside and saying, what's going on? Like we all want this movie to happen. Like all we want is for this to be a really fun, enjoyable experience. How can we all work together to make that happen? And sometimes coming at the project or an issue from that point of view really diffuses even the other person who's messing up, because sometimes they're messing up because they feel disrespected. I mean, it was hard. I was one of the younger people on set. I'm a female, and I'm, you know, the head person on set, and some of the people I'm, you know, most of the people that I'm ordering around are twice my age, you know, older men, right? So that I understand where. So
they come in where I know more than you.
I know more than you. You know, if I'm unhappy about something or I'm, you know, whatever, they can probably, you know, in their own right, people have the way they play things in their head. Their ego can be hurt in some way. So if I could go back, I would take more time to just let things to pause, get myself right, and approach it from that point of view of like, how can we all make this come together and be an enjoyable experience?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, whether they're there or not, it's going to happen.
Right.
You know what I mean? Half the time I just did it myself anyway. So, you know, might as well do it myself anyway and have them be happy, or, you know, do it myself and have them think that they did it and be happy, than them all pissed off, you know, calling up people to try and screw me over, and me being pissed off and having to do it anyway. So that's something that I find is not often talked about, because we look at people who are the director of being like, you know, the more, you know, stamp my foot on the ground and the more assertive, like, assertive I can be, the more people respect me. And at the end of the day, it's not entirely true.
Right.
People will just respect you because you're putting the project first, and you're going to let your actions speak for them. So you're let your work speak for itself. Right. You know? And granted, that didn't happen all the time. It happened on the few times where I was like, you got to be kidding me right now that you just messed up on this. Like, what in the world? Right. So it's like,
you had one job.
You had literally one job. I've got 500, and you messed up on the one job, and we talked about it. And so, you know, I had to like forgive myself for a lot of that and have a lot of understanding. But that's been the hardest thing more than anything else. Like that's been the hardest thing for me to grapple with. And probably the biggest lesson I always give people going into the next thing is like, this industry is full of egos.
Yes.
It encourages ego.
Right.
It encourages you to be like, who can puff their chest up higher. Right. It encourages you to be like, who has the most credits, who can do the best this, who can do the best that. Right. And so you have to be strong enough to not be that at all.
Now, just real quick to interject, there's a huge difference between having confidence, which is healthy, and then an ego, which is just too much confidence. Like you're at this point, it's just like it's overtaken a lot of things, and now you're losing sight of what you shouldn't lose sight of. So just keep that in mind, everyone. Confidence is good and it's key, and I have to tell myself the same thing because I have low self-esteem, so it's something I have to work with personally. But ego is a whole different beast.
Yes, very much so. A great book I can recommend, I talk about it all the time, is Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. It really draws that line very clearly between confidence and ego. And you know it. You kind of know it once you feel it. On set, it's so important to have confidence, and a lot of the confidence comes from being able to make decisions. Right. You know, if you're someone who can make, that was probably the biggest strength I had on that set, was just like, if there is a problem that comes up, you can make a decision and make something happen. That's confidence, and that's where people will respect you, because they're going to follow the strong leader. There's a difference, though, between being the strong leader and the leader that is a little hot-headed.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a little, huh?
Just a little. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Don't mess with me, is all I'm saying.
But that's good, though. Okay, so I mean, that's good advice, and I'm thank you for sharing that, because it is important to understand how to treat people, because it will define a lot of things, not just on set, in your own life as well, because you could either put the fire out or let the embers go on and cause other little fires here and there, and then you're dealing with a whole different beast at that point. Absolutely. So it is important to deal with people, and that's something I know I have to work with. You know, because it is difficult, because I get I'm Latina, and I get super hot-headed, and I'm like, what, you know, just like I try to, you know, calm myself, and the other thing is with myself is I'm very sarcastic.
Me too.
So there's times where if people know me, they understand, like, okay, she's kind of joking, but there's kind of like a little
truth in that.
There's a little jab there. But for the most part, that's something I have to work with, because there's times where I have to step back and be like, okay, you know, and it's apologizing is a huge thing too. Yeah. Don't be too big to apologize.
Don't worry. The thing is, it's not about people pleasing.
Right. Exactly.
It's not about people pleasing. It's about making sure everything is about the project, and you as a director, as a producer, as the head of, you know, the set, is about managing expectations, you know, and from, you know, investors and everything like that, managing personalities from your crew, managing emotions from actors and everyone to make sure everyone's performing at their peak and their focus is in one area and one area only, and that's doing their job to make the project happen.
Absolutely.
Anytime that there is a distraction or there is something that's taking away from that, that's your job to handle it.
Right.
And you just want to make sure you're doing it in a way where, yeah, it brings everyone's focus back versus diverting their attention onto, their own personal feelings and whatnot.
Good point. Very good point.
Yeah.
Now, how do you deal with the shadiness of things? And what I mean by that is, like, this industry, there's all sorts of people, and there's people that you can trust, and there's a lot of people you can't.
Yep.
And you learn real quick, either directly or indirectly, hopefully not too directly. I had to deal with stuff in my life where I got scammed, and it took a long time to rebuild. And so I want to just real quick, that's part of the reason why Female Filmmakers Fuse started, was to help other filmmakers not have to go through the same thing.
Yep.
And this podcast is sort of like a educational purpose so people can listen, students, I encourage especially, listen and learn from others' experience.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I can imagine you must have come across a lot of interesting people that can make a lot of promises that they cannot fulfill. And how did you come across that? Not how did you come across that? How did you deal when you came across that?
Yeah, totally came across this. Still dealing with it right now, actually. I mean, it's kind of, been diffused and whatnot. But, man, how did I deal with it? Well, I don't know if I can, legally go into the bits and pieces of everything, but I didn't deal with it great. I mean, I lawyered up. I mean, that's number one. Find yourself a really good lawyer.
Right.
2, to prevent any of this, make sure you have a lawyer write your contracts. Have another lawyer friend or another producer just look over it before you finalize and get other people to sign these things, because I had a situation where my one of my contracts didn't have a certain clause in it that could have very, very prevented a lot of the things that I went through with a particular person.
Mm-hmm.
It just really could have diffused, their actions carrying on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow, when you don't have that one little line in there that really good, it's like, why wasn't that in there?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know, because this is your first time. You thought it looked good. Why didn't they know? Because they've got a million other productions that they're working on, and it slipped their mind, and every person's going to be like, oh, sorry, because it doesn't really hurt them.
Right.
So have someone else look over those things and be like, number one, get a legal fees clause in your contracts.
Yeah.
So someone can at least, be threatened by the fact that if they lose to you in a legal situation, that they have to pay your legal fees, because that's really, really important. But also too, I really, I actually did good with another shady person. They didn't end up being on the production because of the fact that they had, this smoke and mirrors aspect to them that, made them very attractive to have on the project.
Mm-hmm.
And when they don't deliver on something and how they react, they don't own up, and they make it your fault, get rid of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just a big thing. Because sometimes you'll listen to them. They've got more experience than you, all these things. You have to trust your gut. We were talking about this before we went on air about, you had a bad gut feeling about someone and end up saving you in the long run so big.
Yeah.
I had a bad gut feeling about someone, and I didn't listen to it, and it ended up hurting me in the long run, and people will say, well, you have to weigh the pros and cons, but they're bringing all this to the production and all this. If you have a bad gut feeling about someone, just cut them. You'll deal with the logistics of it. Just cut them, because people can be very, you're making a product, right?
Exactly.
You're making a startup. It's not like you're doing a short film. You're making a startup that's, expected to bring in revenue, and people love to take advantage of that, especially if you have good relationships with investors and they see that they can possibly get money. People will always take advantage of that. So you have to really stick to your gut. You have to have integrity in what you do, and really make sure your legal contracts are so airtight, where you are protected in every single way. I mean, that's just, make it very difficult for someone to come after you. I mean, there's, things in there that are required that protect your employees, and you want that for sure, but that's also why you have workers' comp.
Right.
You have payroll that, is there for that as well. But it's very important that you make it so you're not paying even more legal fees to fight someone that signed a contract where it's like they don't even have those rights anyway, but because you don't have that one little clause, they still have a chance because you don't know what kind of relationship they have with their lawyer.
Right.
You know, they may have a lawyer friend that's doing it pro bono. They get a piece of the winnings or whatever, or the settlement. So there's just, people are shady whenever they see dollar signs. So always trust your gut. Be aware of when people can't, you know, fulfill promises and then how they don't own up to it. Mm-hmm. And get good lawyers.
No, seriously, that's a huge thing. I had a different project that I worked on a while back, and it wasn't all mine. It was a shared project, and the people that were involved that were more in front of the camera started to get a little bit greedy and started thinking, I think we can make something out of this. This is supposed to be for a TV series that never happened. This is part of the reason why it never happened. But so these people got really ahead of themselves, way too ahead of themselves. And I was trying to explain it to them, like, this is like a pilot. Like, even though we have enough for a full season, this is literally, we're trying to pitch this to get it somewhere. Mm-hmm. After that, go try to have people sponsor you, whatever, get your name out there. But right now, no one knows who you are. Mm-hmm. And that's just the reality. Well, we got in the mail this cease and desist order for a song or something. Yeah. An image or whatever. And then it was both a song and an image, and I was like, that's interesting. And it was a lawyer friend that they had. Oh. But the lawyer friend that they had didn't deal with entertainment. So because I looked up the lawyer and I was like, this person doesn't even know what they're talking about. Yeah, you'll see a lot of those in this industry. So wow. I had to send back, like, here, I'll sign it because I don't want to deal with you guys. Like, we won't work with you happily. Yeah. But I own the footage. I own the rights to all this stuff. Yeah. And here's the proof that I do. And I pretty much sent a copy of the contract that we had with them, which basically allowed us to use the image for whatever. Like, they already signed it. Yeah. You know, and there was nothing, and the lawyer kept sending back, like, I said stop. Like, it was kind of... Oh, it's amazing what lawyers will, like, they'll look at something and they, like, did they sign the contract? And they'll just try and bully you. Yeah, and I was like, do you know entertainment law? Because no, you know. But it's just really interesting because it's true. You don't know who you're dealing with, and sometimes they think because they have a lawyer... Lawyers are the same as doctors. And what I mean by that is, like, there's specialties in different areas, right? So I'm not going to go to a brain surgeon and talk about my heart because it doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. You know, the brain surgeon's going to be like, yeah, that's okay. Here's a cardiologist you should be talking to, right? So why would you go to a real estate attorney to talk about entertainment law? Also, too, another thing that I learned is lawyers are also business people. Oh yeah. So money. Yeah. So if they see an opportunity to, you know, go to court, they'll go. Yep. They'll always advise to it, right? Number one thing to always do is get your E&O insurance. That saved us. I mean, that really, really saved us because, you know, sometimes you have to take a step back and think, okay, this lawyer is saying we can fight this, we can do this, and they get on your side. And they're like, this person's so wrong for doing this. And, you know, in all honesty, yeah, they are wrong for doing this. And yeah, they should pay because, yeah, they're probably doing this to other people. But at the same time, you have to think, is it my job and is it financially beneficial for me to, you know, dish out the justice? No. You know, not really. I mean, it may be for you, and you have to look at that financial situation for yourself and make that judgment call. But, you know, looking back, I'm like, I think sometimes lawyers will often, I think there was a plan D, you know, out of plan A, B, and C that we didn't truly explore, and maybe give enough weight to because, you know, they want to get the money. Right. It's true. Yeah. And then just real quick word of advice. Any lawyer that guarantees something to you, run. Yes. Because they cannot. Yeah. No one can guarantee anything to you. No one. I don't care how easy they think the case is. Yep. You can't guarantee anything in life. That's just a fact. So I always, because I was in the field of law prior to doing this stuff like entertainment and whatnot. And I was in the field of law and entertainment and / immigration. So I dealt with like a lot of visas for celebrities and whatnot. And so it's just interesting when I hear people say like, no, they guaranteed it. And I'm like,
interesting.
How can they, you never know what, if it's a judge or immigration or whoever is dealing with it, you don't know what they're going through that day and what they're going to decide. And you don't know what the other person has who you're fighting with has up their sleeve. So there's no reason why anyone should guarantee it. A good lawyer would say, like, you have a good chance, but, and then add the reasons what, comes after that. But, that's a good lawyer. Yep. Just know that, because I come across a lot of people that say, yeah, but my lawyer guaranteed it. And I was like, that's a scary lawyer.
Totally. Oh my gosh.
That's a scary lawyer. Because that lawyer right now, he's guaranteeing it because he just wants you to pay. And I'm pretty sure, even if it's a friend, I'm pretty sure he's giving you some quote unquote sort of discount. He's still making the money. He's still making the buck right there. And that's all that lawyer is thinking about. Just know this, because from experience, lawyers will say the magical words to you that they know you want to hear. And to them, it might be an easy case. It might not, or they just don't care. Or a little bit of everything. Yeah,
and I'm glad we brought this up, because this is often something that isn't talked about enough for indie filmmakers, because, and it's the thing that gets them. I mean, this happens all the time, and so many people could really avoid this situation with just a little bit of knowledge on what the red flags look like, and just, how to really, and, honestly, feel free to reach out to me if there's ever, like, you're in a situation, I'll try and, tell you, hey, maybe just avoid this, or, I'll give my little piece of, non-legal advice, obviously, because I'm really passionate about helping people with this, because it was really horrible to go through. I mean, really, really horrible to go through. And granted, like, we came out on the good side of things, but it just always, like, when you have a project and it's fun, it's a movie, it's a movie, it's supposed to be like a really great thing. And when you can be slapped with like something that's so serious and terrible, it's just like, ugh, it puts such a damper on a project. It does. And it can sometimes discourage you from doing the next one, which you should never be, but right. So those are, I'm glad we're bringing that up, and that was definitely a fire to go through, and glad we did, go through it so we can unleash the knowledge on everyone else. But seriously, no, it was, and also too, like, even just from a distribution end, like we did pretty well, and there's so many things that indie filmmakers make common mistakes there. Distribution is a huge thing. Yeah. And marketing. Oh yeah, distribution is huge. And what I mean by that is, like, who you're dealing with. Read that contract a distributor gives you. Totally. Like, read it several times over until you start knowing it by heart. Because there's times where you get lost and you get totally confused by certain things. Where a lot of distribution contracts will say, we'll have X percentage, and then we also get, for example, 25% of sales, because we're the sales rep of this project. So now what you didn't realize is that, let's say it's 50-50. So they're saying, we're going to split this project, just to make it simple math, 50-50. I'm going to split this project with you 50-50. Distribution deal. Okay. So the distributor is going to get 50% and you're going to get 50% of whatever is made or whatnot. And then they're going to say, also, because we're going to be the sales agents on this to make sure that it gets on all the right platforms, that's another 25% that we're making to make sure that it, like, pretty much if they sell it to Netflix, for example, and Netflix gives them $200,000, they get 25% of that $200,000 plus the 50%. Mm-hmm. So pretty much they now have 75% of your project. Yep. So it's little things like that you're not aware of, because you're looking at it. It's in really different strategic parts of the contract, and you're just too excited because you're like, oh my god, my film's gonna get distributed, and you're not aware that you just gave X amount of percentage of your project. And you have to keep in mind that if you have investors, you have to take care of your investors. A big thing too is, like, we went through the negotiations, and oftentimes too, a distributor, no matter how good they are. Mm-hmm. I mean, our distributors are phenomenal. Film Mode is great. Mm-hmm. They send us quarterly reports all the time. We're getting, paid, which is great. That's and awesome. So many don't. But even then, it's like every single one will put a fake timeline. Like, you need to give us an answer by X date. Oh yeah. You don't. Yep. Take your time reading it. Mm-hmm. And also too, you'll bring up these extra expenses and they'll justify it, being like, well, listen, we can't afford to go to X, Y, and Z unless you give us like this type of marketing expense and this type of the other. And truthfully, Yes, if someone wants your movie, they want your movie.
Right.
And honestly, I believe the landscape has changed so much that you won't even find sales agents and distributors independently in the next 5 years.
I hope so.
I think they're all going to be replaced with a distribution producer.
Okay.
Who comes on board, right in the beginning. They're part of your development process, and they are building a distribution plan that is very tailored to your film and the marketing, and it all starts from the script. Because if you think about it, nowadays, it's like, I can distribute my film on my own, right?
Which is true.
What's the only thing stopping me?
Right.
Audience outreach.
That's
true.
Yeah.
That was a really great, and marketing expenses, and that was something that was, a really good argument on the distributor side. However, when push comes to shove, and it actually comes down to distributing it, their marketing is so cookie cutter blanket across the board. It's not even tailored to my audience.
Right.
Right?
That's a good point.
So your marketing expenses are just copy and paste across all your films, and you're hoping that one of them makes a splash. Well, hello. It's only going to make a splash if you construct it to. It's a startup company. So every single release and marketing and distribution strategy has to be tailored to that film. The really successful indies nowadays are doing that. And I think you're finding, what was interesting about A24 as a company is they started to do that with all their films.
Granted, they're great too.
They're great. And a lot of it came down to the way that they market and distribute their movies. Now they've got this great contract with Apple. But even, A24 has a bit of a cookie cutter approach to some of their library films. But it's interesting. There was this great newsletter I got the other day where it went through pretty much all the major distributors, right? And how many films they release a year. Roughly on average, it was about 20 to 50. Right, films they release each year. I'm like, that's a lot of films. You go to a company like Gravitas, they're releasing 350 to 500 films a year. There's no way you're doing a marketing and distribution plan. And I have friends that are, with that company, and it's a great company, and I know people that are there, but the expectation.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. So your expectation for your return, your expectation for the type of release you're going to get has to be tailored to the distributor you're going with.
Right.
And the distribution plan. And that's something that I knew from the get-go a lot of indie films weren't doing. And even I, with a lot of the planning that I did and the marketing that I did, thank God I did it, I even underestimated how little they would do.
Yeah. And it's something that's a good point to make too, is do your research when it comes to distribution. Find out where your project fits best.
Yes.
I did that with the horror film that I worked on. And I just looked up all the horror film distribution companies. And some of them are huge and some of them are not so huge. I went on all levels of it.
Yeah.
And saw what they did, the success of their projects to each one, where they were. And I want to say that a lot of the ones that didn't do so well and they're still successful, do a lot of video on demand, which is fine. It works out. But if that's not what your game plan is, that's why it's good to make that sort of your homework. Do the research. It's important because if you're pitching your film to the wrong distribution company just because it sounds like a huge distribution company, you're like, oh no, but they distributed this. I'm like, yeah, how does that work for your project?
Yeah, you have nothing to gain.
Yeah.
They have nothing to gain from you.
Exactly.
I love that. Be actionable about it. What I did the same time is you guys get an Excel spreadsheet.
Right.
Name, go through the list of the company that would be your ultimate dream company to your base scenario where everything went wrong and you are self-distributing.
Exactly.
Put every company in between, every scenario in between, and really plan for the base common denominator. Now, everyone's like, oh, self-distribution, it sucks. Well, actually, self-distribution is becoming huge. There's amazing companies like Freestyle Digital that are free, and Freestyle Digital will essentially, they're a service where you will essentially, this is the amount of money that I have to self-distribute. They will take it, they will create an entire budget out of it, and they will distribute and market your film. They only take 20%, and that's it.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, what I've done is I put some of my short films, and I'm actually making money off of it.
Amazing.
On Amazon Prime. Because you could do that. You can self-distribute there.
Totally.
But that's all on you. Keep that in mind.
Your marketing.
Your marketing. So if I don't put it out there, if I don't let everyone know that, hey, my short film, which is hey, you have 20 minutes to spare, here's a short film, and it's
Yeah.
free.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not charging you, go on Amazon Prime and check it out.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've done with a lot of my short films that I thought were like, okay, this is decent, I'll do it.
Yeah.
You know, or some of them I had my business partners encourage me, hey, put this on, and I wasn't too wanting to, but I was like, fine. So we put it out there, and this is where we did it, the self-distributing stuff. And
Yeah.
that's completely self.
Yeah.
Because we're in charge of our own marketing. You know, so worst case scenario, there are ways that you could do it.
I do want to touch on marketing real quick.
Sure.
Because, and this is where, again, it's like I got advice from the so experienced people who've been in Hollywood forever. And sometimes people just don't, like, you know, you can be in Hollywood for decades. And if you've never made an independent film, you know nothing. Right?
Yeah.
It's amazing how much it doesn't cross over when it comes to the indie film space.
Right.
A lot of times, so the traditional model of marketing is you hire a name actor, you put them in your film, and they're going to sell you essentially for all your foreign sales, and they're going to be like the draw. They'll do a couple posts, right? Which we know how great, how long that lasts.
Right.
And then people will see your film because they love them so much. Okay. Sounds very ridiculous when you say it out loud, and it's pretty much as ridiculous as it sounds.
Right.
It's not true. So when it comes to foreign sales, yes, there is some pull and whatnot.
Right.
But if your film is great and your film is doing well in the U.S., the foreign distributors will buy it. You don't even need a sales agent. There was this whole myth that you need a sales agent.
I think someone made that title up just to make that money.
Yeah, and people made companies on being this mythical third party, which they've made a lot of money, and a lot of them have gone out of business. Yeah. So people said, okay, foreign distributors will never talk to a producer because they don't trust them. Okay, interesting, because there's so many shady sales agents that have been known and gone out of business. Why would they trust a sales agent?
Right.
You know? So that logic goes out the window.
Right.
At the end of the day, be a good producer, right? The thing is, in today's market, in today's climate, I should say, in this industry, the producer holds so much more responsibility. Yeah. That's where I think the distributing producer will come on board. They're going to bring their contacts. Go to AFM, go to EFM, go to the markets, go to different things, and start getting your contacts with foreign distributors. You know, they need the content. Yeah, right? They need content just like everyone else. We know the demand for content is increasing in America so much. The content around the world is increasing so much, like the demand for it. So if you've got a really interesting genre piece and you know, like, terrible example, but for instance, like, you've got an amazing horror, and we know Germany loves horror films, you know, like, you may find there's a nice distributor over there, and like maybe you go into, a lot of times these distributors will find films or want to partner with films to go release in a festival in that region. Yeah. Right? There's nothing saying you can't do that on your own. Right. Oftentimes we rely on this third party sales agent to be the key to my film success.
They make it sound like it's so difficult. That's
it's
the reason
so
why.
difficult. You need them. You need
them
so
much. Yeah.
Let me tell you something.
You don't.
These sales agents never made a movie.
This is true.
They never made a movie. You made the movie.
Yeah.
You can do anything after you've made a movie.
This is true.
You can do it. Like, plan for it. Bring on partners. Do not do what I did, which is do it all yourself. That was a terrible idea. I'm always looking for great partners that I can trust and collaborate with, and do it yourself, because, and if that means you have to make your movie for less, and granted, when you don't have a name actor in it, which if you find a name actor where it suits your budget, it really makes sense for your movie, they're really passionate about it, by all means, but it is not required for every film.
That's true.
That is a myth, because at the end of the day, with the way marketing is, unless that name actor is posting about your film every single day, they're not doing it. You know what I mean?
Because a lot of times, like, the ones that you see that they post every single day, it's because they're getting paid to post every single day. Yeah. And that's usually by a major studio. Yeah. That's saying, like, you're under contract, you're obligated to really, because it's in your contract to constantly mention this project until this date, or you know what I mean?
You have to do a tweet a day, or you have to do a post a day. And
so there's a difference. So don't think like they're going to do that to every single film. Most likely it was under contract. I mean, there are a few that are passionate about a certain project, and that's why they got on to it.
There's producers on it. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's a reason to it. You just know that. Don't think I'm gonna get this actor because I see him talk about his films all the time. Like, that's not
always plan for the base denominator, right? Even when you're dealing with investors, and that was something that I was really adamant about on this film too, is it's all about risk management and not overselling expectations, right? So or risk mitigation, I should say, is what it's about. And, not only just utilizing state tax incentives, but there's even federal tax credits and incentives. I mean, we used to have Section 181, but now we have Section 168, that so many people don't know about, which is very beneficial to films and was very beneficial for our film. I mean, it really was huge. I mean, so much so where investors are like, man, we don't even care if a movie makes money anymore. We would just do it for this. Right. Especially if investors have, previous tax losses that they can apply to the film. These are the areas where people get very caught up in like the story and make a movie. It's going to make a splash, Sundance at the theaters, and it's like they get so caught up in that instead of thinking, okay,
the business aspect.
That's fine, but none of that will happen unless we look at this as a startup. Yep. Right? We've got all the creatives there. It's ticking off all the boxes. Distributors, send them the script, even if, with an NDA or whatever, other producers, just to get their feedback. I got that, and it really helped with the script. Have editors read it. Have people read it so you really know your script, because that is the blueprint to your film's success half the time. Right. Really make sure it's got something to give, and you've got an audience that it can be marketed to. It has an edge. But then you have to go back and be like, okay, let's create our business plan. Let's create our marketing plan. Let's create our distribution plan. Because that is the whole other area that producers just haven't really had to deal with before, because we've had all these lovely third-party companies that have been doing it and failing.
Exactly. No, that's a good point. So we're going to be wrapping it up soon. I want to talk and keep talking because it's like, holy, we got so much to talk about, so you have to come back. Yes. And probably a couple times. Yeah. But before we start closing this off, because normally I say where can people find you and whatnot, before we get there, real quick, because you learn so much, you are putting something together to help other filmmakers learn. Yes. Where could they find this? So basically, they can get it all at once or in sections, depending on what they need help with.
Yes. So I have a company, Jax Productions, and I've created this, course, you could say, but it's really just like PDFs, and they can be, they're broken down from script, development, financial, production, pre-production, post-production, distribution, and release. And you can buy them as sections, or you can buy it as a full course. It hasn't been released yet, but go to stay on top of the Jax Productions Instagram. It's at Jax Makes Movies, and I post little snippets of advice in there and like when it's going to be released. So always at Jax Makes Movies or at Paulina Lagudi. I'm on Instagram all the time.
And I'm really fascinated by that, what you're doing, so much so that I want to talk to you afterwards and see how Female Filmmakers Fuse can help out putting this on the platform where they can contact you.
That'd be great.
And hey, here's where you can go. You know what I mean? So let's discuss that. So again, where can they find you? Instagram, website?
Yes. So at Paulina Lagudi is my personal one. At Jax Makes Movies is my company. And then at Mail Order Monster is the movie. mailordermonstermovie.com.
Where can we find it?
We can find it on all streaming platforms right now, which are like iTunes, Amazon Prime, Google Play, Vudu, YouTube, and then it's going to be released in Walmart DVDs February 5th, and then on Showtime streaming February 6th.
There you go. I'm really excited that everyone watch it. We'll have a link so you can find it. Mail Order Monster.
Yes.
Okay. Watch it. Trust me. Watch a trailer, and then from there you're going to want to watch this movie. It's really great.
Watch it with your kids.
Great. Seriously. Please do it. Thank you, Paulina,
Thank you so much.
Okay, seriously, you're coming back. Everyone, please have a safe and happy Sunday. Go whatever team. Have fun, everyone.
You're listening to Female Filmmakers Fuse with Alexa Polar and Robin Pabello, only on LA Talk Radio.